A newlywed bride from London vanished on her wedding night in Dubai after her husband discovered her secret past, leaving her family shattered and desperate for answers. But 3 months later, hotel security cameras reveal something shocking that changes everything and exposes the truth about what really happened in that luxury penthouse. Natasha Wilson had dreamed of her wedding day since she was a little girl. At 28 years old, she finally found herself walking down the aisle of the most exclusive resort in Dubai, wearing a custom-made gown that cost more than most people's annual salary. The ceremony was everything she had imagined: crystal chandeliers casting rainbow patterns across marble floors, white roses imported from Ecuador, and her new husband Omar Khalil gazing at her with what she believed was pure love. But as the wedding guests celebrated into the early hours of the morning, none of them could have predicted that this fairy tale evening would turn into a nightmare that would haunt everyone involved for months to come. What started as the happiest day of Natasha's life was about to become a fight for survival that would test every ounce of strength and intelligence she possessed. The last time anyone saw Natasha Wilson alive was at 11:45 that night, when she entered the penthouse suite on the 32nd floor of the Burj Al Arab Hotel with her new husband. By morning, she had completely disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a blood-stained wedding dress and a husband who claimed he had no idea what happened to his bride. Natasha Wilson grew up in a modest household in East London, where her mother worked double shifts as a nurse to support her 3 children after their father abandoned the family when Natasha was just 12 years old. Despite the financial struggles, Natasha was determined to create a better life for herself. She excelled in school, earned a scholarship to university, and eventually built a successful career in international marketing. At 25, Natasha landed a job with a multinational corporation that required frequent travel to the Middle East. It was during one of these business trips to Dubai that she met Omar Khalil, a wealthy businessman who owned a chain of luxury hotels across the Emirates. Omar was 35, devastatingly handsome, and came from one of the most prominent families in Dubai. He was also recently divorced with no children. Their courtship was like something out of a romance novel. Omar would send private jets to fly Natasha to Dubai for weekend getaways. He showered her with expensive gifts, diamond jewelry, designer handbags, and once even surprised her with a new BMW parked outside her London apartment. Natasha's friends and family were initially skeptical of the whirlwind romance, but they could see how happy she was with Omar. What they did not know was that Natasha had been keeping a significant secret from everyone in her life, including Omar. Before her successful career in marketing, before the prestigious university education, Natasha had worked as an exotic dancer in London's red light district to help support her family during her mother's battle with cancer. It was a chapter of her life that she had carefully buried, creating an entirely new identity for herself once she graduated from university. The dancing job had lasted only 18 months, but it had been enough to pay for her mother's private medical treatment and keep food on the table for her younger siblings. Natasha had never told anyone about this period of her life. Not her closest friends, not her family, and certainly not Omar. She had convinced herself that her past was exactly that, the past, and that it had nothing to do with the woman she had become. Omar proposed to Natasha on the beach at sunset during a trip to the Maldives, presenting her with a 5-carat diamond ring that reportedly cost more than £200,000. The proposal was captured by a professional photographer that Omar had secretly hired, and the images were later featured in several luxury lifestyle magazines. Natasha said yes without hesitation, believing that she had finally found her Prince Charming. The wedding planning took 8 months, with Omar insisting on handling most of the arrangements himself. He wanted to give Natasha the wedding of her dreams, he said, and money was no object. The guest list included business associates from across the Middle East, several minor celebrities, and Natasha's small family from London. The total cost of the wedding was estimated at over £500,000. Isabella, Natasha's younger sister, was her maid of honor. Isabella had always been protective of Natasha and had expressed some concerns about the rapid pace of the relationship. During the wedding planning, Isabella noticed that Omar seemed to be very controlling about certain aspects of the celebration, particularly regarding the guest list and the photography. When Isabella asked Natasha about it, Natasha brushed off her concerns, saying that Omar was just particular about maintaining his family's reputation. The wedding ceremony took place on a Saturday evening in March, with the reception held in the hotel's grand ballroom. The celebration was lavish beyond imagination. A 7-course dinner prepared by celebrity chefs, entertainment by world-renowned musicians, and enough champagne to float a small boat. Natasha looked radiant in her custom gown, and Omar appeared to be the picture of a devoted husband. However, several wedding guests later reported that they noticed tension between the couple during the reception. Omar seemed distracted and kept checking his phone, which was unusual behavior for a groom on his wedding night. Natasha, meanwhile, appeared increasingly nervous as the evening progressed, though she maintained her smile for the cameras. As the last guests departed the reception around 11 o'clock that night, Natasha and Omar retreated to their penthouse suite. The suite was a masterpiece of luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Persian Gulf, a private terrace with a hot tub, and a bedroom larger than most people's entire apartments. Rose petals had been scattered across the marble floors, and champagne was waiting on ice. What happened next would later be reconstructed through hotel security footage, witness statements, and forensic evidence. According to the timeline established by investigators, Natasha and Omar entered their suite at 11:45. For the next 30 minutes, everything appeared normal. Hotel staff reported hearing music and laughter coming from the penthouse. But at 12:15 in the morning, the mood shifted dramatically. Hotel security cameras captured Omar, leaving the suite alone and heading to the hotel's business center. There, he spent nearly an hour on the computer, though the specific websites and documents he accessed were later found to have been deleted. Security footage showed Omar's demeanor during this time. He appeared agitated, frequently running his hands through his hair and pacing back and forth. What Omar had discovered that night was a series of photographs and videos that an anonymous source had sent to his email address, just hours after the wedding ceremony. The images were from Natasha's time working as an exotic dancer 7 years earlier. The anonymous sender had included a detailed message explaining Natasha's past and suggesting that Omar had been deceived about his new wife's background. The revelation devastated Omar, not because he necessarily judged Natasha for her past, but because she had hidden such a significant part of her life from him. In his culture and social circle, reputation was everything, and the thought of his business associates and family members discovering this information filled him with rage and humiliation. When Omar returned to the penthouse suite at 1:30 in the morning, he confronted Natasha with the evidence. Hotel guests in nearby rooms later reported hearing raised voices and what sounded like furniture being moved or thrown. The argument escalated quickly, with Omar accusing Natasha of being a liar and a fraud, while Natasha tried desperately to explain the circumstances that had led to her decision to work as a dancer. According to forensic analysis conducted later, the confrontation became physical sometime around 2 o'clock in the morning. Blood evidence found in the suite suggested that Natasha had been injured, though the exact nature of her injuries remained unclear. What was certain was that Omar's anger had reached a dangerous level, and Natasha found herself fighting for her life against the man she had married just hours earlier. The penthouse suite was 32 floors above the ground, with no means of escape except through the main door or the private elevator. Natasha was trapped with an increasingly violent husband who felt that his reputation and honor had been destroyed by her deception. The situation was growing more desperate by the minute, and Natasha realized that she needed to think quickly if she was going to survive the night. Hotel security footage showed Omar leaving the suite again at 2:45 in the morning, this time heading to the hotel's maintenance area. He returned 20 minutes later carrying what appeared to be cleaning supplies and several large bags. The implications of these actions would not become clear until much later, but they suggested that Omar was planning something far more sinister than a simple confrontation. When Natasha failed to answer her phone the next morning, Isabella became concerned. The sisters had made plans to have breakfast together before Natasha and Omar departed for their honeymoon in the Seychelles. Isabella tried calling multiple times, but both Natasha's and Omar's phones went straight to voicemail. Isabella arrived at the hotel at 10 o'clock that morning and demanded to speak with hotel management. She was eventually escorted to the penthouse suite, where she found Omar sitting alone on the terrace, staring out at the ocean. When Isabella asked where Natasha was, Omar's response was chilling in its simplicity. "She is gone." Omar claimed that Natasha had left the hotel early that morning. after they had argued about wedding expenses. He said she had been upset and wanted to return to London immediately. When Isabella pointed out that Natasha's passport and luggage were still in the suite, Omar became evasive, suggesting that Natasha had been acting irrationally and might have left without thinking clearly. Isabella immediately contacted Dubai police, but the initial response was frustratingly slow. Because Omar was a prominent businessman with connections throughout the city, the police were reluctant to treat him as a suspect without concrete evidence of wrongdoing. They filed a missing person report, but suggested that Natasha might have simply needed time to cool off after the argument. The investigation gained momentum when hotel housekeeping staff discovered Natasha's blood-stained wedding dress in a laundry bin on the 20th floor. The dress had been cut and torn, and forensic analysis later revealed that the blood was indeed Natasha. This discovery transformed the case from a missing person inquiry into a potential homicide investigation. Detective Rodriguez, a seasoned investigator with Dubai police, took over the case. Rodriguez had worked on several high-profile cases involving wealthy suspects, and he understood the political sensitivities involved. However, he also knew that justice had to be served regardless of the perpetrator's social status. The detective's first breakthrough came when he obtained access to the hotel's complete security footage. The cameras had captured Omar's suspicious behavior throughout the night, including his trips to the business center and maintenance area. More importantly, the footage showed that Natasha had never left the hotel through any of the main exits, contradicting Omar's claim that she had departed early that morning. Rodriguez also discovered that Omar had made several phone calls from his mobile phone between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. The calls were to a company that specialized in yacht charters and deep-sea fishing expeditions. When investigators contacted the company, they learned that Omar had arranged for an emergency charter, claiming that he needed to dispose of some damaged furniture from his hotel suite. The yacht had departed from Dubai Marina at 5 o'clock that morning, with Omar and several large bags on board. The charter lasted 3 hours, during which time the boat traveled approximately 20 miles offshore. Omar had specifically requested that the trip include stops at locations where the water was particularly deep, claiming that he wanted to ensure the furniture would not wash back to shore and create environmental problems. As the investigation continued, Rodriguez interviewed hotel staff members who had worked the night shift. Several employees reported seeing Omar in various parts of the hotel during the early morning hours, but none of them had seen Natasha. More troubling was the testimony of a housekeeping supervisor who had noticed that several sheets and towels were missing from the penthouse suite's linen closet. The forensic team's analysis of the penthouse suite revealed additional disturbing evidence. In addition to the blood found in the main living area, investigators discovered traces of bleach and other cleaning chemicals that had been used to scrub the floors and walls. The pattern of the cleaning suggested that someone had been trying to eliminate evidence of a violent struggle. Isabella, meanwhile, had begun her own investigation with the help of Natasha's friends and colleagues. They discovered that Natasha had been receiving threatening messages on social media in the weeks leading up to the wedding. The messages had come from anonymous accounts, but they all contained references to Natasha's past and suggestions that her secrets would eventually be exposed. The investigation took on international dimensions when Rodriguez learned that the anonymous tip about Natasha's past had been sent from an internet cafe in London. British police were contacted, and they began investigating whether someone from Natasha's past had deliberately sabotaged her marriage out of jealousy or revenge. 3 months after Natasha's disappearance, the case had grown cold. Despite extensive searches of the ocean floor and coastline, no trace of Natasha's body had been found. Omar had been questioned multiple times but maintained his innocence, claiming that he had been cleaning up after their argument and that the yacht trip had been exactly what he said, a disposal of damaged furniture. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A technology consultant hired by Isabella to recover deleted files from Natasha's laptop made a stunning discovery. Hidden in the computer's recovery partition was a detailed escape plan that Natasha had apparently created months before her wedding. The plan revealed that Natasha had been receiving threatening messages not just for weeks, but for months before her wedding. She had traced the messages back to Vincent Crawford, a former client from her dancing days, who had become obsessed with her and had been tracking her movements for years. Natasha had realized that Vincent was planning to expose her past to Omar, and she had been preparing for the possibility that her marriage might be destroyed. The escape plan was elaborate and brilliant. Natasha had researched Omar's family history and discovered that his father had been involved in several business scandals that had been covered up by the family's wealth and influence. She had also learned that Omar had a history of violence against women, including his ex-wife, who had been quietly paid a substantial settlement to keep quiet about the abuse she had suffered. Most importantly, Natasha had discovered that Omar had been planning to have her killed regardless of whether her past was exposed. Through a private investigator she had hired, Natasha learned that Omar had been involved in insurance fraud schemes and that he had taken out a massive life insurance policy on her just weeks before their wedding. The policy would pay out £10 million in the event of her death, and Omar had been planning to collect on it by staging her murder during their honeymoon. The computer files revealed that Natasha had prepared for the possibility that Vincent would expose her past on her wedding night. She had arranged for a boat to be waiting offshore and had planted evidence in their hotel suite to make it appear that she had been murdered. The blood found in the suite was indeed hers, but it had come from a small self-inflicted cut on her arm, not from any violence by Omar. On the night of the confrontation, Natasha had allowed Omar to believe that he was in control of the situation. She had staged the appearance of a struggle, planted the blood-stained dress where it would be found, and then escaped through the hotel's service elevator, while Omar was distracted with his attempts to cover up what he believed was her murder. The most ingenious part of Natasha's plan was that she had anticipated Omar's reaction to her disappearance. She knew that his guilty conscience and his fear of being caught would lead him to act suspiciously, essentially incriminating himself in a crime that had never actually occurred. While Omar was busy trying to dispose of evidence and create an alibi, Natasha was safely aboard a private yacht heading toward international waters. The security footage that had seemed to show Omar's guilt was actually documenting his panicked response to finding what he believed was his wife's dead body. His trips to the business center and maintenance area, his arrangement of the charter boat, and his attempts to clean the suite had all been efforts to cover up a murder that he thought he had committed in a fit of rage. The final piece of the puzzle came when investigators discovered that Natasha had been in contact with a network of women who helped other women escape from dangerous relationships. This underground network had provided her with new identity documents, safe houses, and the resources needed to start a new life, far from Omar's reach. The revelation of Natasha's survival sent shockwaves through both the Dubai Police Department and the international media. What had been treated as a murder case was suddenly revealed to be an elaborate escape plan executed by a woman who had discovered that her new husband was planning to kill her for insurance money. Detective Rodriguez found himself in the unusual position of having to arrest Omar not for murder, but for insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and domestic violence. The evidence that Natasha had gathered about Omar's past, combined with his suspicious behavior on the night of her disappearance, provided more than enough proof to convict him on multiple charges. Omar's conviction sent a message throughout Dubai's wealthy elite that money and influence could not protect someone from the consequences of their actions. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison and was ordered to pay substantial fines and restitution. His business empire collapsed, and his family disowned him to protect their own reputation. Isabella was eventually contacted by intermediaries who arranged for her to speak with Natasha by phone. The conversation was emotional and healing for both sisters. Natasha explained that she had been forced to fake her death to protect not only herself, but also her family from Omar's revenge. She had discovered that Omar had been planning to harm Isabella and their mother if Natasha had simply tried to leave him through conventional means. Natasha had spent the 3 months since her disappearance recovering from the trauma of her experience and working with law enforcement to build the case against Omar. She had been living under protection in a safe house, gathering evidence and preparing to testify against her former husband. The case also led to the arrest of Vincent Crawford, the man who had been stalking Natasha and had exposed her past to Omar. Crawford was charged with harassment, stalking, and conspiracy, as investigators discovered that he had been working with associates of Omar, who had been planning Natasha's murder. The entire conspiracy was much larger than anyone had initially realized. Most importantly, the case exposed a network of wealthy men in Dubai who had been using their financial resources to control and harm women. Several other victims came forward after Omar's arrest, leading to additional investigations and prosecutions. The scandal became a catalyst for reforms in domestic violence laws and law enforcement procedures throughout the Emirates. Natasha's courage in planning and executing her escape also inspired other women who were trapped in dangerous relationships. The underground network that had helped her became more visible and better funded, allowing them to assist dozens of other women in escaping from abusive situations. The case of Natasha Wilson demonstrates that sometimes the most dangerous person in our lives can be the one who claims to love us most. Natasha's ability to recognize the signs of danger and plan her escape literally saved her life and the lives of other women who were being targeted by the same network of predators. Her courage in facing the truth about her past and refusing to be ashamed of the choices she had made to survive and support her family is a powerful reminder that we should never allow others to define our worth based on their prejudices or expectations. Natasha's past as a dancer was not something to be ashamed of. It was evidence of her strength and determination to create a better life for herself and her loved ones. The case also shows the importance of trusting our instincts when something feels wrong in a relationship. Isabella's concerns about Omar's controlling behavior were valid, even though she could not have predicted the extent of his dangerous intentions. When family and friends express concerns about our relationships, it is worth taking their observations seriously. If you found this case as fascinating as I did, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Seat for more incredible survival stories and cases where justice ultimately prevails. Have you ever had to trust your instincts about someone who seemed too good to be true? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember that sometimes the most important thing we can do is listen to that inner voice that tells us when something is not right.